I'm Daz, and today on the bench is an AIWA AD1600 from around 1977. I'm not sure exactly the year, but it'll be around that. This is a deck I picked up from a second-hand shop, thrift shop, whatever you want to call it. It's been sitting around a while, so I can't remember exactly when I bought it, but as you can see, the lid's a little bit cloudy, but let's lift that up. See if I can get out of the way of the camera. Well, almost. This machine is quite a respectable machine. It's suitable for ferrochrome, chromium dioxide, and it has Dolby in it. Just looking at some of the specs, because I've got a service manual. 34 transistors, 24 diodes, 2 FET and 1 LED. FETs are used in the Dolby circuit. It's also got an MPX filter, which is for filtering out the 19 kHz tone that might leak from the tuner if it's not filtered very well. It's also got separate bias and equalisation. I noticed with interest that ferrochrome is 110% of the bias and 150 on chromium dioxide. It's got dual sliders for mic and line, so presumably you could mix your mic with your music, perhaps an early karaoke machine. Also sliders for output. Of course, sliders were all the thing in the 70s. It says it's got a ferrite guard head, so presumably that might be a glass ferrite head. There's a tape running indicator, and indeed there is a auto stop mechanism in this, which is based around a mechanical rotation detector rather than the Hall effect devices that were used in later cassette decks. I guess they weren't quite cheap enough to use at this stage. It's in reasonable nick. Some of the writing has come off the silk screen, and I'm told by a couple of hi-fi friends that was quite usual for these. Socket wise, there's a mic socket and phone socket at the front, and the usual phonos and a DIN at the rear. This uses a synchronous mains motor for power, which is a lower voltage one running off the transformer. So the speed is really determined by how good the mains frequency is, and it's usually fairly accurate, so that's not too bad. There's also a memory function to stop it on the tape counter. It says it's got frequency response to 14 kHz on a standard tape and 17 kHz on a ferrochrome and a ferrochrome tape as well. So that's a fairly good frequency response for something of this age, because I guess as head technology improved, so did the frequency response. Of course, it's AC bias and arrays, as you'd expect. Anyway, that's the machine. So I suppose the next thing is to power it up and see if it does anything. Well, I've brought it up, and we have VU meters pegging, which is probably going to be the record playback switch. There's no motor operation, so the auto stop is working. That's good, but there's no motor operation, so maybe there's a belt issue or something, or the motor has stalled, so I'm not going to keep it on for long. This cover appears to slide to the left and is removable, so I'm going to take that off. Carefully put that over there. I'm going to be very careful because this is very heavy. It's about 6 kilograms. I don't really want to put the weight of the knobs on here, but yes, it'll be these screws to remove the wooden case. Well, here we are inside the unit itself. Good grief. Very, very large chassis. Well, I think we can instantly see why we had no action. There is no belt on the flywheel at all. And what a big flywheel that is too. So probably why it's got a good whir and flutter figure. I think it's 0.07 WRMS. So that's quite a good whir and flutter figure. So let's just turn the mains on carefully, and there's the motor. So the motor is running. It's got a double pulley so that you can run it on 50-60 Hertz, because obviously this is a synchronous motor, so the speed of this will depend on the mains frequency that you're putting in. I can see some grease that looks a bit thick. That's not good news. There's the solenoid that releases the mechanism, and you can see it's connected to the stop plate here. I'm not sure what's going on here. I have no idea. That looks like a modification. Typical grey capacitors. C-core transformer. That's nice. Obviously to keep magnetic fields down, and hence why the motor is so far away from the heads here, because you don't want magnetic fields getting into that. What else can I tell you? So yes, there's a lot of adjustments available here. I can see a lot of inductors available down the side here. There's a screening part here, just helps screen the preamp, I guess. Yes, nice looking thing. Well, I think looking at that screwdriver end, you can see where some of the belts have gone. So we've got the old goo thing again, so not so good. This obviously will release the flywheel, but I notice there's a switch attached to it, so have to be careful of that. That'll have to be removed as well. And also check to see if there's anything on the other side, such as an oil blocker, the little plastic bit that's usually on the capstan. So yeah, okay. I think there's 3 belts in this unit. If I looked at the diagram right, I'll have to check that. So definitely none seen yet. So there appears to be 3 drive belts. There's one for the counter, one for the main drive from the motor, and another one for the fast forward rewind, looks of it. Of course, this is the typical 1970s construction, where everything is like a billion wires. And the mains is not very well insulated either, so definitely a bit of a hazard. There's multiple taps on this transformer for 110 and 240, so with the frequency adjustment here you can use this worldwide, so I guess they did sell it worldwide. So to remove the chassis, looks like there's a screw under here which is hidden under this cable. There's one over here somewhere. Trying to locate it. I'll just put my head in the front of the camera, yeah. There's one here and one here, so not quite sure where that one is. It looks very, very buried under there somewhere. Must be under that wiring, and you daren't move anything in case something breaks off. No, the screw's actually here. Looks of it, looking at what's looking at the tag to the top. So it's actually here by this large smoothing capacitor, so there you go, and there's a look at the sockets on the back while we're at it, and the voltage selector. Here's a bit of the drive belt I've just found. That's long since rotted away. Oh dear. Yes, we can see some of the remains of the belt here now. What a bit of luck. It looks like, yeah, look at that. Just goes through the UK mains plug, through the base. There we go. I'll just have to clear this up a bit and the rest of the rubber, but I've been picking little bits of rubber belt out. That's the little washer that sits on the capstan. I've taken that off, so I should be safe to lift the bearing out when I'm ready. I'm still finding bits of belt everywhere. But this is a project I'm not going to rush this time. There's a lot of this gluey gunk as well, which is very 70s. I'm going to get in a bit closer and we'll go around the machine. So that's the motor, that's the flywheel, there's the auto stop solenoid, that's the main PCB, that's the Dolby PCB, which is supposedly removable, but they've not used a connector on it, have they? The Dolby circuit is not it's not IC based, it's entirely discrete, hence where the 2 FETs come from. So you can see I've removed the flywheel here. You can see some remnants of the fast forward rewind belt here. There's 2 knurled areas here. One of them makes contact with this pulley. The belt then makes the belt then drives this pulley here, and then there's a rubber wheel on the other side which makes contact with either the take up or supply reel for fast forward and rewind. So this moves either way here to make contact, as you can see. And just look at how slow that is. I think we've got thick grease there. This lower knurled bit makes contact with this rubber wheel here, and here we have the take up clutch, and you can see there's bits of metal on there that make contact. Let's zoom in so we can see a bit better. There we go. You can see the little copper springy thing that adjusts the clutch tension, and usually this is different varying height, so you can adjust it. So yeah, looking at how slow that was, I think, oh, it's not so bad now, but it was a bit, yeah, it's a bit slow that way. The grease is probably a little bit gone thick now with age. It's a very nicely built mechanism, I've got to admit. Here's the pause mechanism, and as you can see, as I exercise it, you can see the rubber wheel moves away from the take up capstan, so at least that doesn't sit there spinning round, wearing the clutch out. And no doubt on the other side what happens is it'll pull the peach roller away from the capstan. So that's how that little bit works. Here we can see this stop lever, and if I put a function down, you'll see that a little bar pops out and pushes against it. And if I stop it by pressing the solenoid over here, which is for the auto stop, you can see it comes up, and then it of course releases contact with that little bar, and that drops the function that whatever's put on at the time. Here you can see the remains of the belt on these two pulleys. See if things don't slide away. So yeah, a little job. I'm going to use a screwdriver and then very carefully clean it up. That's all got to be gone. Any stickiness and it'll cause problems. Well, I finally think I've got all the lovely goo off, so everything is nice and clean now. I'm going to do a little bit of mechanism clean up and re-grease. I can't make my mind up whether to completely strip it or just clean up what I can. Haven't sort of made my mind up on that yet. What I do need to do is, I think, re-lubricate this motor up here, which is out of shot, and a few other things, so I'll just get on with that. I suspect that the belt for the tape counter is going to be equally gooey, so that's something to come. I'm just trying to find a belt for the fast forward rewind. This is a 1.2, which seems to match up with what I've got left. And when it's stretched to that much, it reads about 57, 58. I know somebody's going to ask me what's the size of the belt. Well, this is the best I can offer as a guidance to where to start. But it depends on the belt's elasticity as well. It's just tight enough so that the clutch will slip without the belt slipping, so that is okay. That's what you're looking for, really. It's no good if it's so loose the clutch doesn't slip on this fast forward rewind part, but you know, I'm often asked about sizes of belts, and usually about 3 years after I've made the video, and I honestly can't remember by then. I probably couldn't remember by tomorrow morning. Well, I've been busy lubricating and checking things out. I must say that belt is touching there. Now, I can't be certain if that's acceptable or not, but I'll have to find out later. So I can never seem to get the right controls. That's one way, that's the other. So yeah, there is a slight belt rub there. I'll have to see if that comes back and bites me later. I have managed to clean inside the bearing. I'm going to use a very light oil. Try not to touch this. A very light oil on the capstan, and obviously it needs a little bit of grease where the nylon bearing contacts. There's a little bit of wear on mine, as you can see, just a little bit, not much, but hopefully I won't need to readjust it. But there is an adjustment of the gap that you normally have when it's up this way between that bearing and the tip of the bearing on the flywheel. So one way of finding out approximately what size belt you want is to use a piece of string. That's one way recommended, and then you just need to make the belt a little smaller so it's got a grip. So yeah, this is nicely lubricated. It runs very nicely what it needs to for that low whoa and flutter. And this is the thing, I'm going to have to use what belt I can find at the moment. There's belts and belts, and using a really rubbish belt can have a bit of an effect on that whoa and flutter figure. This is what I've got left, and problem is, because it's disintegrated, I don't know what the actual size should be. So yeah, but I'll see what I can find. What I think my aim is at the moment is just to fire it up. I'm going to clean the record playback contacts. And it looks like there's a pair underneath here, so I shall do a bit of squirty down there carefully, and I just want to see if we can get it started up. But I think I'm going to have to look the other side first, so that we can see if that other belt for the tape counter's dissolved, because otherwise if I try and run it and that belt has dropped bits everywhere, it's all going to get in the mechanism. So oh well, we'll see. This is a 5mm belt I'm using, although I measured 4 on the original belt, but like I said, because it's shrunk it's hard to tell. But obviously the belt seems to be sitting in the middle of the pulley, which is good. It is slightly too tight, but it's fine for testing. As you can see, it's a little bit on the tight side, but it'll do for testing. Well, my first little mistake here is I've had to take this apart again, and that is because I forgot to set the spring back. I'm trying to see if I can get the best angle so you can see it. Well, now I know why the belt wasn't sitting correctly, and there's my first faux pas. I forgot to put that spring back underneath that idler. So I was wondering, why isn't anything engaging? Of course it had sprung back and sat here. I can just get it to this point here, and that's why that take-up spool was not engaging either. So that was a get this to focus. That was my little faux pas so far. So yes, make sure that spring is engaged. So one screw there, one screw there. There's one up here, one down here, one under this cable, and one down here. So let's just hope. The mixture of screws, some seem to be tap screws, and some seem to be directly in the plastic like a self-tapper. So difference of screws there. Right, I'm going to turn this around the other way and hopefully the lid will come off. Right, I made a note of where the knobs went, but whether that was right in the first place I don't know. What are we going to find out when I try and remove this? Oh right, just the LED fixed it. Right, there's the top section. Ah, I've just seen the tape counter belt. I didn't spot that before. Down there. You can see here what's left of the belt, the looks of it. There looks like there's an intermediate pickup point there. Now I bet that's the mechanical switch that detects tape movement, because the auto stop keeps stopping. So obviously no belt, no drive to the counter either. And there's the 2 wires for the memory on the counter, I guess. I have to be very careful now if I tip it up the other way, not to do any damage. Let's just zoom out a bit. There we go, so you can see the whole beast. Guess I need to disconnect the LED as well. Well, looks like it needs a bit of a clean here. Yet more switches. This device seems to contain so many switches, it's a bit scary. Seems to be a screen connection here for some reason. That's the dampener, I assume, for the eject. Yes. Just looking at a few things. Hopefully these two screws will remove the counter and the auto stop pickup, and then maybe I can sort something out with the belts, but I'm still scratching my head trying to work out how the belt gets to here. I'm really not sure. That switch must be for pause, so that stops the auto stop from triggering when it's in. There's another micro switch here, can't quite see what that one's for. It looks like there is a chrome pickup here, so that will no doubt work. This needs to come off for me to clean, really. I suspect it's going to be this bar here to release this spring, and the mechanism, which is out of a shot here, the dampening mechanism. Be very careful with that. We'll just look it through the manual for inspiration at the moment. So here's the naked mechanism. There's a switch here. These are the supports that hold the cassette in. One of these must be the record interlock, and I assume that's, I don't know what that's for. It must be for chrome, I would imagine. Being the second one in. There's the lamp, and that illuminates this piece of plastic here, which looks very greasy and dirty. I assume that the pickup belt must go around there. That brake looks a bit strange, how it's bent. Makes you wonder if it should go around the other way. Right, so rewind. There's an idler wheel here to apply the rewind. Fast forward, that goes straight onto this front table. Push the wrong button then. I've got to just push this up to allow me to go into play. And that's play mode. I assume underneath, yes, I can see the wheel there moving, so that the clutch is engaged to the flywheel. Yeah, so that's the basics of it, I guess, but I thought I'd just put a shot in of this. That's the dampener. Now this must be some back tension device. It feels a bit stiff, but very little tension there. Must be back tension, because I can't see that that's disengaged at all. It appears to be interlock, permanently engaged all the time, it seems. So it must be for back tension. If I just get it into play, yeah. It just applies a little bit of back tension. Interesting. We had to show the LED, didn't I? There we go. I'm just getting it in shot. So looks like the LED's actually, I don't know if there's an LED inside there. It actually does look like an LED, so it's got a very strange sort of prism top, but this is a 1976 LED. It's not going to be very bright, is it? So it probably needs all the help it can get. So I've just taken the head guard off, and there's your pinch wheel capstan. There's the ferrite guard head, complete with AIWA written on it. It's probably rebadged from Akai. There's your raise head, so your tape goes through the raise head, past the record playback head, through the idler, pinch roller, capstan, whatever you want to call it, and then onto the take-up reel. So that's the tape path. But this is a bit gummed up down here. I can see some sponge there inside that spring. That's probably for there's the pause. So that just pulls the pinch wheel away from the capstan. I also know from the other side, if we look at this, you can see it's withdrawing the drive from the take-up as well. That's your pause, basically. I can see that there's some plates supporting the head plate, and there is ball bearings on it, which is cool. Except that one is right underneath the pinch wheel, which was a bit inconvenient. I'm not quite sure how to get at that one, but the pinch wheel's still in there. It's looks a bit of a problem. Yes, and to get the pinch wheel out, this is the height adjustment. You're supposed to adjust that to make sure the tape travels right, so you'd no doubt need to cut out tape for that. That's one thing I don't have. But yeah, and the grease, yeah, very sticky. Relying on the grease to hold the ball bearing in, this is incredibly fiddly, and I hope I don't lose the ball bearings, but it certainly, hopefully, will help it to run a little bit more freer. That feels so much better. Very positive now. So that was one of the reasons it was feeling a little bit sticky. Now I know I should have had this plate off, but I just don't want to do that at the moment. But I feel that's adequate. Yeah, that feels so much better. Good. Just having a look at the motor here, because it didn't quite look to the diagram. The diagram shows 122 microfarad capacitor, but what in fact we've got is a 50-60 Hz switch here to apply an extra 4 microfarad on 50 Hz. It appears. So that says 60 Hz and that says 50 Hz there, so that's the position it's in, and you've got a link across there, so that presumably puts more capacitance in. So this looks like one of those, it's an AC capacitor. I bet it's electrolytics back to back, isn't it? But whether that's any good I don't know, but yeah, I seem to, every time I touch this there seems to be black everywhere still. So yeah, I might give that capacitor a check and just see if it's okay. Seems to have a nice dent in it there, where it's been done up very tight. Of course one of the wires fell off here, but luckily I took a photograph before I removed it. But this board normally sits on top of the solenoid with a couple of nuts as spacers, which seems a bit botchy, but there we go. Well, very interesting, because when I first measured it I was able to measure 4 and 18 microfarad. These screws have come loose, and the reason is because they're sitting on solder. As we know, the solder goes loose with age, so that's an interesting thing I've learned, is that this is intimately not given the right capacitance for 50 Hz. So yeah, that's not so good. Yeah, it's a bad design, that, to let that grip into solder, because it just goes soft after a while. I had a few more belts turn up today that I didn't have in my kits, and I've just got a 122 by 6mm. 122 means the size of it if it was in a circle. You measure from each side, but it's a 6mm thick belt, but the tension seems about right. The previous 108 belt was far too tight, and yeah, that's a fairly good grip, so I'm fairly happy with that. But 6mm is probably wider than it's called for, but we'll see what happens. If I've got an error in the speed, I'll know why, but the belt does seem to be gripping round the larger diameter in the middle of the pulley. I'm no belt expert, I'm no pulley expert, but let's just see if that's a better approach. Nice 6mm belt means you've got plenty of grip, but the original might have been about 4.5. We just don't know, because it's obviously shrunk and done all sorts of things, so I don't actually know what the original belt was at all. Whether this is the right way to disassemble it is another question. Whether I should have gone for access underneath the circuit board, I don't know. Just noticed a Sony bias oscillator. Yeah, same problem again. The belt has melted, so there we go. Never mind. Oops, not great. Hope I didn't just pull a wire off then. Take me several hours to work it out. Right, well that's your pickup for your auto stop. Second time I've seen one of them recently. So I would imagine to get this belt on, I keep put my hand in the way, don't I? Yes. I have to take the contacts off. Release from that screw there. Why does this look like the Sony pickup? When did AIWA get bought by Sony? Yeah, not yet, I didn't think, but there we go. Yeah. Oh, must be cassette sensor. So yes, there's going to be a belt from here to here. And then we've got to have a belt from here round to the spool over here. So, right, I think that's just a case of looking to see what I've got in my belt to small cassette belts and just picking one that'll fit, I guess. Pulling this bit of cardboard up, which is over the contacts, is not ideal. I expect this is going to need a dot of contact cleaner, but meanwhile I've got to clean up all the goo again. Ugh. Just having a look at the top of the motor here. I've moved the bracket out of the way after loosening the nut there. Very hard to say. That hole appears to go quite deep. This one not so much. I'm not sure if that's to remove the bearing, which looks like a plastic one. Whether that is an oiling point, I don't know. I've tried some fine oil down there and it seemed to disappear initially, but who knows. So I'll have to decide if I want to completely break the motor down to lubricate both bearings. Well, let's just zero this. I'm going to attempt to measure how deep 735, yes, because I want to remove this pulley, because I think it's the only way I'm going to be able to try and lubricate at least the top bearing, because that's the one that's got more pressure on it. So, well, it's quite grubby down here, but I'm just going to try some fine oil and see if I can get it down the bearing. That'll save me having to completely disassemble it. As you can see, I now have the drive counter belts in. The one I had, the only one I could find to fit here, it's quite a small one and it's a little stretched. There's a little bit too much tension on that one, but I'll probably have to come back to that if I can find something a little bit more suitable. It just misses here, as you can see. But I'm going to put the cassette mounting bit back in now, and I'm going to clean the contacts and see if we can get this to go. Well, I've got the screening cover off the main amp and power supply board, more disintegrated foam, still seem to be getting covered in black gunk, but there we go, loads of it. Okay, well, the two record playback switches are located here. On the end of this lever. They're yellow in colour, which is unusual, so I'm going to spray those and then work them. A lot of dust there, and also there is actually a couple of muting switches here to do with record, playback and stop, so probably give them a quick spray as well. Then hopefully I'll be able to just give it its first try. I was just looking at the possibility of recapping this, and there is a lot of electrolytics in here. Just a note that that insulator is on that point there. I'm not sure why. Maybe it's to lift the sheet up, but you know, that's the usual thing. It's just to screen it from electrical noise, because I no doubt the heads are probably connected here somewhere. I'm not sure where. There's so many wires. This is one of the disadvantages of these 1970s devices. They're just all point-to-point wiring, and can be a bit of a headache, but there we go. Okay, here we go. Let's see how many more problems we've got remaining, because I've got a feeling I've still got problems. Rewind. Rather gutless still, so we've still got a bit of slipping there. Okay, fast forward, a lot more enthusiastic, bit of tape spill, brakes aren't working very well. Okay, play. first push play, I wasn't getting take-up spool, so that's another thing I'm going to have to look at. I don't know why that was. Although I suppose having this on a towel isn't ideal, because it can get caught in things. Yeah, definitely got some spill there. But at least we've actually got playback now, thank goodness. So it now looks more promising, but yeah, that's struggling. Where it's slipping, I'm not entirely sure. But that is very, very slow compared to what I'd expect it to be. Brought the LED into shot. And yes, the auto stop works, there we go. I thought the LED may flash, but it doesn't. I'm not going to use this tape as a indication that this is any good, because this tape has been well mangled. But anyway, look, at least we've got playback now, so that's a good start. Things to figure out: poor rewind, why the front spool stuck to start with, unless there was something in the way of the mechanism. Just caught my finger on the flywheel then. But I will just try eject. I haven't re-lubricated that yet. There we go, that's better. It's hard to know what's what without the controls being labelled.